The original 151 Pokemon have been revisited enough times to make the average fan sick, and despite that fact, there are still quite a few Pokemon from the Kanto region who are absolute stinkers. So good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, and today I'm going to be breaking down who the worst Pokemon from the Kanto region truly are. This will primarily be a breakdown of how these Pokemon perform within the region of Kanto itself, which means since all the Kanto-based games act like the future evolutions like Crobat and Kingdra don't exist, then so will I. I will treat the originals as fully evolved Pokemon within the Kanto region. And yes, fully evolved Pokemon only, which means Magikarp will not be on this list, you're welcome. However, a Pokemon can dodge this list if they have some sort of competitive viability, be it singles or VGC. This is just for Pokemon who strictly have no purpose competitively or casually speaking. Number 10, Pidgeot. Probably not the Pokemon you expected to start this list off, right? After all, Pidgeot is a pretty popular team pick, has a Mega Evolution in Let's Go, and a hairstyle that defined an entire generation. He can't be that bad, right? And it's true, stat-wise, Pidgeot is nowhere near a bottom 10 Kanto Pokemon. But the issue is, Pidgeot is completely obsolete next to the Pokemon that it ironically overshadows most of the time, Fearow. For starters, since Gust isn't a flying type move in Gen 1, don't ask me why, I didn't cut the game, I think it's stupid too, the Pidgey family doesn't get a single flying type attack until Wing Attack at level 31, whereas Spearow comes equipped with Peck right away, instantly giving it better coverage, especially for Viridian Forest. Even in Fire Red and Leaf Green, you have to grind Pidgey to level 9 to get Gust, which is now a flying type move, but by then, I'm already halfway through the forest where Pidgey is supposed to be the most useful. And while Fearow doesn't learn its best move Drill Peck until level 34, it's worth waiting out those 3 extra levels because of how much stronger Drill Peck is than Wing Attack, especially in Gen 1, where Wing Attack is the same base power as Peck, which Fearow has had since birth. And that's not even to mention that Fearow reaches its final form a whole 16 levels earlier than Pidgeot. And it has better distributed stats than Pidgeot, boasting way higher speed and attack, at least in Gens 1 through 5, as Pidgeot is now 1 point faster than Fearow as of Gen 6. And the Mega Evolution? Forget about it, it's post-game only, and Let's Go doesn't even have enough post-game trainers to warrant a conversation about that. But even if you're considering Mega Pidgeot more broadly speaking, it is one of the least used Mega Evolutions. It has never had a strong VGC presence, it was okay in singles for the few years it was around, but that's really all that can be said about it. Number 9, Rapidash. I know, you're stunned that you haven't seen Tangela yet, but just like Pidgeot, Rapidash's biggest problem is the competition it faces from fellow Kanto region fire types. Sometimes your biggest homies are your biggest ops. Growlithe and Vulpix are both available significantly earlier in the game, whereas in most games, Ponyta is not available until reaching Cinnabar Island or the Sevi Islands. Yeah, it's not even in Kanto in Fire Red and Leaf Green. And while it is available around the same time as the other two in Yellow and Let's Go, where it gets moved to Route 17, aka Cycling Road, the fact that it evolves into Rapidash at level 40 significantly hinders its usefulness, as you can just use a Firestone to evolve Growlithe or Vulpix way earlier. And since most of the trainers that are weak to fire are towards the middle point of the game, you really don't want to wait that long to get your fully evolved fire type. Like, congrats, you finally evolved. Now you're gonna get Earthquaked by Giovanni, Surfed by Lorelei, Rock Slided by Bruno, and completely walled out by Lance. Even Magmar is better because he at least gets Thunder Punch. Rapidash has also brought the rear among all of Kanto's fire types in every single generation's competitive rule sets. Arcanine at least has a Hisuian form and some VGC representation, Ninetales was a Gen 5 Weather Warrior, Charizard got 2 very relevant Megas and a G-Max form, and Magmar, well, he got Magmortar, and Flareon? Okay, maybe it's better than Flareon, but still, Firestone, it's better for Kanto than Rapidash. Rapidash sadly has no way to compete with any of Kanto's fire types, be it main story, VGC, singles, it is sadly outclassed in every context. Number 8, Electrode. Electrode is basically just Raichu or Electabuzz, but with infinitely worse coverage and stats that are distributed worse than Pokemon cards are in 2025. The only reason Electrode isn't lower on this list is for the fact that in general, electric types are very valuable in the Kanto region. There are a significant amount of water and flying type trainers that they beat. They perform pretty decently in the late game and beat quite a few Elite Four members Pokemon. I would still prefer any other Kanto region electric type on my team than Electrode, but given its high speed and the fact that it can just learn Stab Thunderbolt is enough to keep it relatively high up on this list. Still, Electrode isn't a very impressive Pokemon, and even its Hisuian revision did little to boost this Pokemon's competitive viability. Number 7, Seadra. In a sea of spectacular water-type Pokemon, Seadra is quite washed up. Actually, that implies that Seadra was ever good. Let's just say, Kingdra exists for a reason. Let's focus on some positives though. In Gen 1, Seadra has a pretty high special stat, making it quite bulky and allows it to use powerful moves like Surf and Blizzard quite well. Although, it loses 50 points of special defense in the subsequent Kanto games, making this Pokemon extremely frail. And in Let's Go, they at least lean more into its Dragon aspect, giving it Dragon Pulse at level 42, so it can at least match up against Lance decently well. And that's pretty much where all the positives stop. Nothing else about this Pokemon is remotely redeeming. Please use any other Gen 1 water type. Use Blastoise, use Poliwrath, use Cloyster, even Golduck! It's the same Pokemon but bulkier and has Calm Mind. It's just better! In fact, use anything aside from number 6, Seaking. That's right, there is one Kanto region water type worse than Seadra, and that is Seaking. Purely just because it has lower speed and lower special attack than Seadra does, so it's even less threatening somehow. Seaking is unfortunately just a victim of old Pokemon mechanics, as it's built to be a rare water-type physical attacker, but water is purely a special type until Gen 4. So for 2 of the 3 Kanto-based games, it's completely useless. It is slightly better in Let's Go. You know what? I might even say it's better than Seadra in Let's Go, because it at least gets Waterfall pretty early on, it learns some more TMs, it's still far from the best water-type Pokemon, but it's a slight improvement. That's all I can give it though. Seadra and Seaking also share a common flaw in the fact that they evolve relatively late by Kanto water-type standards, evolving at levels 32 and 33. Wartortle is a far better mid-game Pokemon, Poliwhirl evolves at level 25 and still has room to grow, Shelter and Staryu are both Waterstone evolutions with evolved forms that have more than enough competitive history on their side. Also, Gyarados and Vaporeon are from this region and need no introduction. You can also get almost all of those Pokemon I just mentioned way earlier in the game too, whereas you need Surf or a Good Rod to catch a Horsey or Goldeen, neither of which you are getting until Fuchsia City, which is so late in the adventure that they functionally have no purpose. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see more, then make absolutely sure you're subscribed. There's a good chance that I turn this into a series for every single region, so definitely don't miss out. Number 5, Arbok. Arbok is pretty much just as useless as Seadra or Seaking, except it has a way worse typing. Being a pure poison type in Kanto is pain. First of all, Kanto has more poison types than any other region, which all resist themselves. There are no fairy types unless you're playing Let's Go, and even then, no significant trainer really uses them aside from that one weird battle against Mina after the SS Anne. I don't know if I classify that as a significant fight though, and nearly every Kanto grass type is also part poison, so you don't really even beat them. I mean, you lose to Sabrina, you don't do any damage to Koga, you lose to Giovanni, you don't do anything against the League. It is hard to find a reason to use Arbok in Kanto. Arbok also has one of the worst move pools in Pokemon history. In Let's Go, it gets Sucker Punch and Poison Jab pretty early, which is nice, but aside from that one game, Arbok has pretty much nothing. In Fire Red Leaf Green, without TMs, Arbok's most powerful move is Bite or Stab Acid, both at 60 power. Yes, it does get spit up later on, but that requires setup and is honestly way too late to even be relevant or good. Number 4, Farfetch'd. You know, we all know why Farfetch'd is bad. Here, look at its base stats. That's all the reason I need to justify Farfetch'd being on this list. So obviously, since we already know that, here are some reasons why Farfetch'd is not number 1 on this list, despite having maybe the worst stats in all of Kanto. And that reason is the People's Champ. The one, the only, Sheding! As the only Farfetch'd you can use in Red and Blue or Fire Red and Leaf Green, Sheding single-handedly carries this Pokemon out of the bottom 3. First of all, in Fire Red and Leaf Green, Sheding is always holding the Leek, formerly known as the Stick, which increases Farfetch'd critical hit rate by 2 stages. 2, that's a lot! Furthermore, Farfetch'd is already one of the fastest Pokemon to level up from Gen 1, but since you can only get it from an in-game trade, that means Farfetch'd will be the fastest leveling Pokemon that you get in the entire game. And in the early portion where a few levels make a big difference, Sheding is not a bad temporary team member. And that concludes my defense of Farfetch'd. Sheding for president, make it happen. Unfortunately, literally none of these points work in Farfetch'd favor in Let's Go, where Chiding no longer exists, but it at least has 90 base attack as of Gen 7, so that's the good news. It's still not bottom 3. Number 3, Parasect. I'm gonna be real, there is one reason and one reason alone to use Parasect, and that is Spore. But that's assuming you even get to use Spore, because you know what Parasect is weak to? Everything! In Gen 1, it is the only Pokemon, aside from Paras, to ever have 3 double weaknesses: Fire, Flying, and Poison. And maybe the worst part is, you don't even get Parasect until level 24. If it maybe evolved earlier like Butterfree or Beedrill, you could maybe justify using it for a decent stretch of the game, but no, by the time you reach level 24, everything is knocking you out. The sheer amount of weaknesses this Pokemon has makes it borderline unusable. It is good for putting Pokemon to sleep so you can catch them and hopefully replace Parasect in the process. Number 2, Lickitung. Honestly, it was a toss-up between Lickitung and Porygon for this slot because they both fill the same role of underwhelming Gen 1 normal type to a fantastic degree, but Porygon at least gets Lock-On and Zap Cannon in Gen 3, not a bad combo, and they have at least substantially improved Porygon's moveset over the years. Lickitung is a Pokemon that I am convinced that Game Freak has been trying to forget about since it was created. First of all, I had never seen Lickitung stats until making this video. I always assumed there was a decently tanky Pokemon with some okay attack, and boy, was I wrong. Oh, but JPR, Lickitung is one of the best Pokemon in Little Cup. Dog, if you are using Little Cup to justify a Pokemon, you have barked up the wrong tree. I need you to go outside and touch a real tree. The best part of Lickitung is that he can't mess up your Nuzlocke encounter, because at least in the Kanto region, he's only ever been a trade Pokemon or post-game in the Cerulean Cave. Unless you're playing Japanese Blue, where he's in the Safari Zone, but then my next question is, why are you Nuzlocking Japanese Blue? There's like 20 Kanto region games, and that's the one that you're choosing to play? Before we get to number 1, here are some dishonorable mentions. I'm sure you expected to see Dugong at some point in this video, and while it is true that Dugong has never been a remotely competitive Pokemon and is completely outclassed by the Lapras you get for free at Silphco, Dugong actually has a phenomenal matchup spread for the late game. And say if you're Nuzlocking and your Lapras is sadly no longer in this world, I wouldn't be upset about picking up a Dugong to the Seafoam Islands. I have actually used one to pretty good success in a Fire Red Nuzlocke before. That's pretty much the only context that Dugong is good in, but it's good enough to dodge this list. Next is Persian. Persian is a Pokemon that is absolutely horrible nowadays, but given how threatening this Pokemon was in Gen 1, not just in the main story, but especially in competitive 1v1s, I could not confidently place it in the list. In the department of Gen 1's many overshadowed water types, Kingler was quite close to making it. In fact, it is actually just the worst Kanto water type in the Gen 1 and Gen 3 games. But since the physical special splits, Kingler can actually make its massive attack stat work for it. Yes, it has to wait until level 41 and Let's Go to get its best move, Crab Hammer, but it has plenty of powerful TM options to choose from in the meantime. Beedrill also sucks, but evolves very early and has literally the only good bug move in Gen 1, and it kinda destroys Erica's gym, so it has a niche at least. Speaking of bugs, Pinsir was quite terrible, but has a Mega Evolution that is actually quite good. It's never really been VGC relevant, but in singles, Pinsir is actually quite a powerful Pokemon, even if it's not so great within the Kanto region itself. And lastly, Ditto. This Pokemon is pretty much unusable for the main story run because it can never have Imposter in the Kanto-based games, but in online play, Ditto is actually sometimes kinda good. It might be the only Pokemon in this video who ever sees any form of VGC usage. Which brings us to the number 1 worst Kanto region Pokemon. Yeah, you already know. It's Onix. Onix is genuinely maybe the most underwhelming Pokemon ever made. It is the first major boss Pokemon you fight in the game. It is absolutely massive. It's a titan of strength in the anime. It strikes fear into your heart until you realize that Game Freak gave Little Bro the worst stats of all time. And not just that, maybe the worst stats in conjunction with the worst typing. Rock Ground makes him double weak to Water and Grass, 2 of Kanto's most common types, but also 2 types that always hit on the special side in the first 2 sets of Kanto games, leaving Onix to rely on its pitiful base 45 special defense rather than its impressive 160 physical defense. I wanted to say, well, at least Onix gets the most broken Gen 1 move, Wrap, like Lickitung does, except it doesn't. It just learns Bind in Gen 1, the infinitely worse version of Wrap. Basically just the same move with less accuracy. I would also like to say that it can at least take advantage of the fact that it learns Rock Slide and Earthquake, but it literally has less attack than Oddish. How are any of its moves supposed to do damage? Onix, I'm sorry, you're a cool Pokemon. You have a really cool evolution that is sadly not usable in any of the Kanto games. But man, you're just not cutting it. You are not making anybody's Gen 1 team. And with that, those are the Pokemon that I believe to be the absolute worst within the region of Kanto. Are there any that you agree with, disagree with? Let me know in the comment section down below. But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.